I walked inside an abandoned house in Pripyat and saw some interesting apartments. Before the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, plant workers lived here. It happened in 1986. The evacuation happened quickly, a day after the accident. Today, the town of Pripyat is empty and radioactive. That is why no one lives in these houses anymore. After the accident at the nuclear plant in Pripyat, there was an evacuation. All the people left forever, and their apartments were left with their things. After a while, the liquidators and the police opened the doors of the apartments and threw all the things into special burial grounds. There was high radiation in the city, and it was dangerous to use these things. But there were thieves in the exclusion zone, and they stole valuables despite the radiation. These houses have leftover furniture. You can find old furniture, such as tables, chairs, beds, and closets. It may be covered with a layer of dust and battered by time, but the preserved furniture helps to visualize how people lived at that time. There are also personal belongings. Various items that belong to the occupants can be found in the apartment. These can be clothes, shoes, cosmetics, books, photographs, and other things that people left behind when they evacuated. These items can tell a story about the lives and interests of the people who lived here. Walls and floors with yellowed wallpaper and peeling paint. Over time, the wallpaper and paint in an abandoned apartment usually fades and becomes chipped. Yellowed wallpaper and peeling paint create an atmosphere of time that seems to have stopped at the time of evacuation. A month later, many Pripyat residents returned home with special permits to pick up important things, because it was already clear that people would never return to the city. Radiation in those years was off the scale.
Hello, hello. It's Soviet Union.
At the checkpoints, dosimetrists checked things for contamination, and if the item was not contaminated, the owner was allowed to take it out of the zone. Today in Pripyat, there is not a single apartment where strangers have not visited. Liquidators, looters, tourists, stalkers. If only they had just visited instead of smashing everything there. You have to walk carefully in Pripyat. Apartments and other buildings have old and dangerous floors. Stalkers often sleep in abandoned apartments in the Chernobyl zone and Pripyat. I often slept in such houses when I hiked in the exclusion zone. There are 14,000 homes in Pripyat, which were built for Chernobyl workers and the people who kept the city functioning as normal. The first apartments were small, like in hostels, but later they started to build more comfortable apartments for 2, 3 rooms, as many children were born in Pripyat and the city became promising. There is a gorgeous forest and a big river around. The place is truly beautiful if it were not for the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. In the houses of Pripyat, there are still a lot of things that were left behind after the deactivators and later looters worked here. There is a lot of junk lying around in the entrances, which is covered with a thick layer of dust. Surprisingly, the dust is not radioactive if you measure the dosimeter radiometer. But I think lab tests will prove the opposite. There is lots of furniture here, but it's battered, partially disassembled, and in some places even rotten from moisture. But there is furniture. There's a wall, a sofa, and an armchair. The objects are covered with a generous layer of dust and whitewash from the ceiling.
Друзья, мы сделали очередной небольшой ремонтик в Припяти. Но подробное видео об этом будет чуть позже.
You can see that the room is humid, but the furniture is still holding up. Walking through the abandoned apartments of Pripyat, I always like. It's interesting to search in them what is left after the evacuation of the inhabitants. It's like traveling back in time, back to childhood. You can find a lot of things that seem to take you back in time, and you remember that the same thing postcard, book, toy, poster, table, bed, closet was also yours. During visits to the apartment, the main thing is not to break, damage, paint, or steal things that forever belong to Pripyat and its former residents. This city ever remained in the USSR. There are no annoying advertisements, politics, modern restaurants and stores, the constant noise of cars and other charms of modern cities. These abandoned houses beckon people with their unknown, mysterious power. After the evacuation, the apartments were guarded for only a few months. The property was allowed to be taken away on the eve of a big looting by the police and others, but people were afraid to go home. Only a few returned to get their documents. Walking around the abandoned apartments of Pripyat is scary. The feeling is that behind the door there may be a person or a dog that stayed in the city after the evacuation. The radiation levels in the abandoned houses of Pripyat are normal, but you can find radioactive stains. But we, as stalkers, have to sleep in these apartments. It's quite scary at night, but somehow we feel cozy, strange emotions.
Friends, my name is Vicky. I many years discovered Chernobyl zone.
Friends, welcome to real prison of city Pripyat. Destroy.
Please subscribe to my Patreon and my channel and you will see very interesting videos and photos from the zone.